Miranda Lambert, a country music singer, was raised in an outhouse in a home without heat. The bitterly cold darkness. It wasn't the worst part, though. At the age of 6, her parents took her out to collect evidence in adult cases while wearing a cheerleading costume. By the time she was 7, the president was impeached as a result of their inquiry files, and the mysteries she discovered throughout those her songs would be haunted for years. This is the tale of a young child who too much was seen, too much was lost, and no one should have to pay the price. Miranda. On November 10, 1983, Lee Lambert was born in Longview, Texas, bearing in her name a family legend. Lucy Miranda, her great-grandmother, inspired her name. Therefore, even as a newborn, she was bound to something more ancient than herself. Her parents soon relocated to Lindale. From the outside, the small Texas town appeared uncomplicated, but behind closed doors there was a great deal of stress. Miranda was 6, the life they were familiar with broke. The Texas oil crisis caused her parents' private investigative firm to fail. Difficult in 1989, and funds disappeared more quickly than they could find them. They were defeated, their house. In an attempt to recover their breath, the family moved in with relatives, and ultimately leased a dilapidated farmhouse with boarded-up windows and no central heating. There were harsh winter nights. Miranda needed to rush to an outhouse in the bitterly cold night. Frequently, the refrigerator was empty. On certain days, they could hunt, fish, or gather anything they could for dinner. It was survival, not ease. She observed her parents' attempts to maintain their composure, and that early poverty hardened her bones and taught her that nothing was certain and difficult. Work was required. Rick and Bev Lambert, her parents, did not have calm office positions. They worked as private detectives, and their work permeated the home. Miranda was raised in the quiet tension, murmured names, and case files. Occasionally, she was drawn into it. They put her in a cheerleader costume when she was around 6 or 7 years old, and dispatched her to assist in gathering evidence in a case involving an unfaithful spouse because no one would suspect a minor. Long before she should have, she entered adult messes. Then in 1994, attorneys employed by Paula Jones hired her parents to investigate President Bill Clinton. It was newsworthy on a national level. Their records were subsequently subpoenaed and included in the House's impeachment proceedings. Miranda observed strangers fighting about things that had begun on the table in her parents' dining room. There were many genuine dangers and mysteries throughout those years, and actual treachery. Later, her songs would reflect all of that. Additionally, Dad introduced a whole new universe into the house. Prior to working as a private investigator, Rick Lambert was a guitarist for the country rock group Contraband and a Dallas police officer in the 1970s. He maintained that aspect of himself. When home, he sang songs by John Prine, Guy Clark, Merle Haggard, and other songwriters who used plain language to convey harsh realities. Miranda took it all in. He inserted a guitar, her chords with her hands, and he approached writing songs as a job, not magic. Her parents encouraged her to pursue music even during hard times. They believed in it so much that they eventually funded her early education with funds that could have been utilized for her college expenses. Performances. She was composing alongside her father by the time her debut album was released, and their names sat together. A subdued indication of the depth of that family music line in the credits. By the 13, already the things she had heard and seen were becoming songs. She was a teenager in East Texas, but the weight of adult experiences such as divorces, extramarital affairs, and courts. Her family relocated to Lindale from Longview, and the detective work continued delivering sinister tales right to their door. Her journals eventually contained such tales. She started to sing in honky-tonks in East Texas, smoky halls where adult males drank beer, and did not anticipate a young girl on the stage. However, audiences stopped talking when she began. She led Rio Palm Isles House Band at the age of 16, a renowned club where Willie Nelson and Elvis Presley had previously performed. Her age didn't matter to that room. It was concerned with if she could order it. She learned how to stare someone down, deal with hecklers, and continue singing. When someone spoke something offensive, she gained the razor-sharp edge that others would later hear in her voice from those nights. She applied to the Johnny High Country Music Review in Arlington, Texas, at that time. The same weekly program, it had given LeAnn Rimes a boost. When she was 16, she sang Payday on stage. Crazy by Klein, Since everyone was familiar with that song, it was not an easy decision, and everyone's perspective on it was different. The judges were captivated by her delivery. The evaluation was rigid and archaic, full of. She stood out enough to receive repeated invitations from those who had heard hundreds of aspirants. It was for the first time she understood the true meaning of professional examination. Meanwhile, a few individuals at that scene informed her that even for country music, it was too country. The insult hurt, yet it persisted. It started a chain reaction that would eventually result in songs about women who refused to remain still. Then something changed. When she was 17 in 2000, a family link made it easier to set up a Nashville recording session. Her dad spent $6,000, nearly everything they had saved, in order to offer her a chance to live in the town of her dreams. She entered the studio with the goal of creating country music. Rather, the producers promoted glossy pop-leaning tracks that were completely unidentifiable to her. They made an effort to soften the sharp edges that were inherent in her life. Miranda sensed that she was vanishing from her own music. At last she took a step. She was heartbroken because she understood the significance of that $6,000 to her family. Afterwards, since it made it very evident to her what she would never want to do again, she would refer to it as a cheap lesson. In Texas again, she made work out of that disappointment. She pleaded with her father to give her additional guitar lessons, and she practiced for hours until her fingers ached. And she began creating fresh tunes out of her rage and stubbornness. These early songs were straightforward and unvarnished, rife with disobedience, distrust and heartache. She had written by the age of 17, enough to fill an album. She recorded 10 tracks in a makeshift studio in 2001. Far from the streamlined Nashville system, at a home studio, she entered her own name, on the cover pressed the CDs herself, and offered them for sale at local events. That she didn't need approval from someone in a glass office, as evidenced by her small independent record. Every single one of her first significant national platform resulted from this. At the age of 19 in 2003, Miranda tried out for Nashville Star, a new television competition. Rather than selecting a secure cover, she opted for "In Greyhound Bound for Nowhere" as an original song she and her father wrote. The narrative of the song was about a hidden relationship with a married person, a tale she had seen but not experienced through the personal studies of her parents. The judges were informed by her that she had not experienced many of those pains herself yet, but she had witnessed the effects of betrayal. More than 8,000 that year, vocalists attempted to be on the show. 12 were selected, Miranda was one of them. She continued to draw attention during the 9-week run. She lacked she had something harsher that people recalled, yet some contestants had flawless polish. She performed songs such as "Hell on Heels" with a serene kind of fire, and viewers began to recognize her. In the background there were conflicts. In order to fit the desired television persona, producers encouraged her to dress more provocatively. She declined. Instead, she wore jeans and boots, which went well with the Texas bars from whence she had come. Her obstinacy nearly cost her, but it also demonstrated to others around her that she wouldn't exchange herself for a performance slot. She later compared the entire experience to attending college. She learned stagecraft, camera techniques, and how phony and political the business might be. After Buddy Jewell and John Arthur, she placed third at the end of the season. Martinez. However, admirers continued to relive her performances and audition. Someone significant had observed. Sony Music executive Tracy Gershian recognized something in her that other label was overlooked. Although some executives didn't think a young woman with a sharp tongue and a weapon could sell recordings. He persisted in encouraging his business to take a chance. Miranda didn't wait at home after the show. Over the phone, she started driving. She opened for performers like Keter Grow at more than 200 gigs in Texas each year, particularly in locations like Love and War in Texas, as well as Jack Ingram. The following night she loaded in, played, and then loaded out that night, gathering a throng gradually that arrived especially for her. Only a few months after placing third in September 2003, finally she was signed by Sony Nashville. It was a $300,000 trade. A long cry from the farmhouse with its boarded windows and refrigerator empty. It's implied that she could give up her job as a waitress and devote herself full-time to music. However, it also required her to relocate to Nashville and abandon her comfortable life in Texas. That action would determine how much she could maintain control. After arriving in Nashville, Miranda took a chance. On her debut major label song, she insisted on using live instruments. She was recording an album titled Kerosene and co-producing songs with Mike Rucker and Frank Little. Most labels are favored, big studios produced tracks that were crisper and more polished, but Miranda wanted the stomp and scrape of actual performers in a space. Sony desired a sound that was more crossover-ready and smoother. She retaliated. She maintained that the stories she was sharing were in line with the unadulterated live feeling. Despite the tension in those fights, she held her territory. The risk paid off when Kerosene was released in February 2005. The album sold roughly 53,000 copies in its first run and debuted at the top of the Billboard Top Country Albums chart. Week, which is practically unprecedented for a new artist. The song with the title Kerosene recounted a narrative of revenge in which he set fire to the home of an ex-lover. The radio, the graphic visual shocked programmers. Angry letters began to come in from conservative listeners. Some individuals stated she was exalting arson. Others felt invisible, particularly women. It was as though someone had finally stated something they had only dreamed about. The song reached number 15 on the charts despite all the noise. The country charts, and gave her the new press moniker, the bad girl of the nation. The album sounded more than just rough. That's how it was constructed. Detractors complimented the live performance and described Kerosene as something uncommon in today's mainstream nation. An undertaking that was friendly and catchy, but it was also sharper and more truthful than it initially appeared. Songs similar to the early forms of Lead and Kerosene, which would eventually become Gunpowder, carried a kind of rage that had not frequently bestowed upon female vocalists. Some folks found solace in the same words that made others anxious. Women in particular are weary of happy endings. Miranda was aware that the criticism was a component of it. When she appeared on television, she stated coolly, "It is fantasy. Women have anger too." That one sentence became a rallying cry for her supporters. There was a cost associated with the success. To encourage, she embarked on a demanding tour schedule with Kerosene, performing on almost 250 events throughout around 18 months, including George Strait's opening slots. A guitar string broke in the middle of a song one evening during a performance. She did not give up. The audience saw her overcome the error as she continued to sing and play. Such moments gradually converted audiences who were suspicious to believers. The record had gone platinum by 2006. Platinum, however, the pressure and continual travel finally caught up with her. She once passed out backstage from fatigue following a performance. Although it was a precursor to the burnout that would eventually torment her, it also demonstrated how she was prepared to go to great lengths for the job. Crazy, her second huge album, The Ex-Girlfriend, continued what Kerosene had initiated. By the She returned in 2007 with a new collection of incisive songs. Crazy Ex-Girlfriend made its debut, peaking at the top of the Billboard Top Country Albums list and 6 on the Billboard 200 for all genres. Over 55,000 copies were sold in the initial week. Her actual life in Texas served as the inspiration for the lead track, Famous in a Small Town. The type of environment where everyone is familiar with your business before you are. The song peaked at number 7 in the nation. She achieved her first top 10 country hit at number 52 on the Hot 100 list of her profession. The album had a lot about small-town heartbreak and retaliation. Tales. Additionally, it was evident from songs like Gunpowder and Lead that she had no desire to soften herself for radio. She was once more struggling for control behind the scenes. Throughout, Miranda decided that the sound was escaping her when she made Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. She sensed the movement of the production, closer to the safer Nashville template that she had previously rejected. Just 23 years old, she took a bold step at the age of years. She took over the production after firing a producer midway through the recording process. Play the part of herself. For young artists at the time, that hardly ever occurred, particularly for women. Although the decision damaged her relationship with her label, it preserved the gritty quality of the album. Songs like Lead and Gunpowder might not have sounded as fierce without that choice. The action startled the community and made it quite evident that she would not give up her voice. Her ascent began appearing at award shows as well. The Academy of Country Music in 2007 chosen as the year's top female vocalist. At the age of 23, she was in a category with powerful women like Martina McBride and Faith Hill, who had been dominating radio for many years. Her victory was unexpected and it sparked conversation throughout Nashville. She was still viewed by some insiders as a dangerous arrival. Rumors circulated of quiet rivalries and shattered egos. People creating competing circles and whispers in reaction to the change. That was a pivotal moment for Miranda. It's demonstrated that despite her fierceness, the industry could no longer ignore her. They were her tunes. At this point, her own sadness started to show in more susceptible tracks. The fourth single from Crazy More Like Her, early in 2009, The Ex-Girlfriend, rose to number 17 on the national charts. The lyrics inspired by the anguish of her personal separation and the silent worry that perhaps she ought to have been nicer, softer, and more like the woman who succeeded her. She did not give those information to tabloids, instead she penned it while attempting to move on and wondering whether she had failed in any way. She kept quiet and let the song speak for itself, allowing many admirers to hear their own. There are questions in the lines. The path was changed by her readiness to transform her personal suffering into something that others could relate to. Into a favorite, road life continued to be hazardous. Her tour bus collapsed in 2008, in Oklahoma, shaking everyone on board and injuring a number of crew members. For an individual who had established a reputation on toughness, all was torn away in that instant. Later on, she composed a song. It bore the burden of that fear and was titled Bring Me Down. At the subsequent performance, she let the audience see a fracture in her armor as she performed it while crying. The collision made her reflect, reminded her of the actual bodily risks associated with the life she had chosen and the true costs of touring all the time. That vulnerability returned to her music, giving a voice that had already began in a chilly Texas farmhouse and grew up surrounded by hunting and court files, meals, and battled its way past television lights, shoddy studios, and smoke-filled pubs. Miranda Lambert entered Nashville's well-known revolutionary period. However, that record changed who she was. Revolution was released by Columbia Records Nashville on September 29, 2009, and immediately struck hard. With 66,000 copies, it immediately shot to the top of the Billboard Top Country Albums chart. In the first week, copies were sold. Her third country chart topping and the largest opening of her career at the time consecutively. The album had 15 tracks that alternated between loud, flaming moments and silent ones with bruises. Blake Shelton, her ex-boyfriend, assisted her in writing and Sing Maintain the Pain, relied on Ashley Monroe for some of the most insightful lines, and even included a cover of Time to Get a Gun by Fred Eagle-Smith. On paper, it appeared to be a solid national record. It actually seemed more like a turning point. The numbers increased gradually, but steadily. On February 16, 2010, Revolution went gold, surpassing 500,000 sold units. By October 15, 2010, it has reached platinum status. Additionally, by October 1, 2018, it has sold 2 million units, making it double platinum. In 2016, it had already, in the US, it sold roughly 1.79 million copies. Behind such figures was 11 of the songs were written or co-written by a woman who began the record in February of 2009. Her personal life was in ruins, but she took that chaos and sat down and made hooks and lines out of it. Though behind-the-scenes rumors circulated about her alleged frenzied writing sessions and the inner turmoil that seemed to lurk beneath all that gloss, Nashville witnessed her develop from underdog to force. Fans were taken aback to hear an album full of grit, old wounds, and a tenacious kind of independence instead of light-hearted party songs. It wasn't even one of her songs that provided the best evidence of her abilities. When she won Best Female Country Vocal Performance at the 53rd Grammy Awards on February 13, 2011, Revolution's The House That Built Me astonished the country music industry. Many predicted that Carrie Underwood's Temporary Residence would prevail. Rather, Miranda's name was The House That Built Me, a touching tale about returning to your childhood home and attempting to find solace in memories. It was written by Tom Douglas and Alan Shamblin. In May 2010, it reached the top of the Hot Country Songs chart, and on January 31, 2011, it was certified platinum. However, the subsequent accolades elevated it to a greater level. It won Single Record of the Year, Song of the Year, and Video of the Year at the 46th ACM Awards on April 3, 2011. The CMA Song and Music Video of the Year were then selected. One song, 5 significant victories. That song didn't seem like fiction to her parents. When her father Rick's private investigation company failed in the 1980s, they initially believed she had written it about their own crisis. They were on the verge of destitution after losing their Texas house, moving into a dilapidated rental, hunting deer, and growing vegetables to keep themselves supplied. She carried that mansion in her bones. Therefore, the emotion in her voice came from a genuine place when she stood at the Grammys and dedicated the song to her roots at a time when her career was taking off. The Revolution itself continued to accumulate accolades. It was named the 2010 ACM Album of the Year and the 2011 CMA Album of the Year. She became the only woman since Shania Twain to win both for the same project thanks to that sweep, which echoed Shania's The Woman in Me era and the 13-year interval between those victories. At the age of 27, Miranda was suddenly mentioned alongside a person whose 1995 album had sold 40 million copies globally. She shocked everyone in April 2011 by dedicating the victory to her broken home during her ACM acceptance speech. She freely discussed her parents' bankruptcy in the 1980s, when they were almost homeless and subsisting on game meat and garden produce in that shabby apartment. These details were instantly connected by fans to the pain inside the house that created me. She was sharing too much, according to some in Nashville, and pulling back the curtain more than a celebrity would typically do. Even though she placed higher on the winners list than veterans like Keith Urban, those same stories gave her a sense of humanity. Her writing for Revolution was inspired by genuine emotional devastation. She penned a significant portion of the album within a 2-week period following a terrible breakup in early 2009. Songs like Only Prettier, which were completed in a cabin in Pigeon Forge with Natalie Hemby, had a sardonic smirk and sharp fangs. The 2010 track Only Prettier targeted high society types with the implication that we are the same, only I am prettier. Some listeners interpreted this as a subtle jab at a more pop-friendly celebrity. There were speculations that she and Taylor Swift were at odds in 2009 and 2010. According to tabloids, Miranda rolled her eyes during interviews when listening to songs about boys and heartbreak. Miranda occasionally made insinuations that she viewed herself in a separate lane, but nothing was ever proven and there was never an open fight. She composed 4 songs in 2 hours on one crazy day, many of which were with Ashley Monroe. She combined the original songs with covers such as That's the Way the World Goes Round by John Prine. When her team discovered that she had 11 co-writes while still embroiled in conflict with boyfriend Blake Shelton, they were shocked. She eventually found her footing as a touring artist after releasing that record. She began her first headline Revolution tour in late 2009. She performed on almost 40 nights, earned millions of dollars in ticket sales, and began accumulating the career total that would eventually surpass $6.8 million in ticket sales and over $395 million in gross earnings through 2010. However, success was accompanied by anarchy. During a live performance at the November 2009 CMA Awards that was intended to showcase her new era, her dress tore mid-song, exposing a portion of her bra on national television. Before social media had completely developed, it became a viral moment that she laughed off backstage but never forgot. It was a kind of gritty country realness. Under the lights, pressure increased as she was worn down by travel, expectations, and incessant advertising, even while the tour continued to sell out arenas. Her personal life attached itself to another emerging celebrity at the same time that her career reached these high points. Blake Shelton and Miranda Lambert first met in 2005, however they were married in a lavish ceremony with over 550 guests on May 14, 2011 in Texas. At the reception, Kelly Clarkson and Reba McEntire performed a song. They became the most watched pair in country music overnight after their wedding. Miranda released For the Record on November 1, 2011 in the same year. At the time, the album became her top charting record. It sold 133,000 copies in its first week of release, debuting at number 1 on the Billboard Top Country Albums list and number 3 on the Billboard 200. It was certified platinum in 2014 after selling over 1 million copies in the US. The light around the couple was enhanced by the songs on that record. Fans who believed that they were the nation's golden couple started to love their duet, Better Together, because one of her major stories was also included in the record. Mama's Broken Heart stood out as a scathingly humorous song that chronicled a family's experience of separation. By September 2015, the song had sold over 1.96 million copies in the US and had risen to number 2 on the Billboard Country Air and Hot Country Songs charts. It was written by Casey Musgraves, Shane McCalley, and Brandy Clark. However, Miranda's tone and demeanor made it readily recognizable. Her mother's admonition to act like a woman after a heartbreak served as the inspiration for the song's lyrics when she was growing up. She reached number 20 on the Billboard Hot 100 at the time, the highest position of her career, thanks to the song's relatable blend of humor and rebellion. The production and the bite in her delivery were praised by critics, and the song soon became one of those that people used to describe her as an artist. Their hold on country honors grew along with their marriage and music. Miranda won Female Vocalist of the Year at the CMA Awards every year from 2009 to 2015. After winning Male Vocalist in 2011, Blake continued to receive nominations. People in the industry started referring to them as an awards machine since their names were so frequently seen next to each other. Some insiders subtly bemoaned the fact that their collaboration sucked up notoriety and attention that could have gone to other performers, thereby creating a monopoly in mainstream country music. Nashville was filled with both respect and jealousy as a result of their combined star presence, which seemed much greater than their individual contributions. On the journey, the price of that achievement became apparent. The difficulties of maintaining a stable marriage were made evident by joint touring, which included Blake's well-lit and unflinching tour. Blake was filming The Voice in Los Angeles, so Miranda missed home dates while her career took off. She turned her annoyance into songs like Hardest Part and relied on music to express herself when she was unable to do so in interviews. They were later torn apart by the continual travel, tapings and commitments, according to sources close to them. Lines about distance, deserted hotel rooms and the burden of loving someone you hardly saw were all present in her songs from that era. Then the rumors surfaced, which made everything even more stressful. Tabloids started publishing cheating claims in 2012, alleging Miranda had texted flirtatiously or had a romantic relationship with another guy. Her tour partner that year, Chris Young, was forced to publicly refute rumors linking him to the incident and make it plain that he would never betray their friendship. The couple had to confront the rumors in public, which was a first for their marriage, even though they were later shown to be untrue. Their already hectic schedules were made much more stressful by the media commotion. Many now consider that time to be the actual turning point that forced them to stop. Miranda was at her best when Platinum showed up on June 3, 2014. With 180,000 first-week sales, the album shot to the top of the Billboard 200 and went on to win the 2015 Grammy for Best Country Album. It also took home accolades from the ACM and CMA. By February 2016, it has reached platinum status. She received more accolades for songs like Automatic. However, Vice suffered because radio stations kept excluding women. She was challenging a system that frequently denied female artists a voice, even in triumph. Her narrative was expanded upon in Tin Man, which was published on The Weight of These Wings in 2016. Together with John Randall and Jack Ingram, she penned it on her porch. It sprang from both her own suffering and the anguish of her parents' divorce. She connected the emptiness of the Tin Man to her sadness. The song's loneliness was felt by listeners, and as a result of individuals seeing their own tales in it, it became viral. Huge audiences attended her 2014 Platinum Tour. More than 23,000 people attended the Indianapolis performance, which contributed to the tour's gross revenue exceeding $1 million. However, rumors of disagreements with Blake Shelton surfaced during this time. Despite the cheers of the crowd, their relationship was deteriorating. She continued to give powerful performances, lighting venues with pyrotechnics and featuring special guests like Justin Moore and Thomas Rhett. But the pressure behind the scenes continued to mount. When she paused her performance in the middle of that tour to reprimand fans for snapping pictures rather than enjoying the concert, it was a turning point that shaped how the public responded to her. It quickly became viral. There was a fierce backlash as people quarreled over concert etiquette. Her Mood Nation Foundation gained notoriety at the same time for raising $1 million for animal shelters, but it was later accused of poor management. Miranda sobbed as she defended it during a press appearance. There seemed to be an endless tug-of-war between compliments and criticism. Her first #1 hit was her duet with Carrie Underwood, Something Bad. However, label pressure served as a direction for the partnership. She acknowledged that it was a premeditated attempt to gain radio attention at a period when female musicians were being marginalized. Despite becoming double platinum, the song exposed the industry's control over even its biggest artists. Then July 2015 arrived. After 4 years of marriage, Miranda and Blake announced their divorce on the 20th. In the following 3 months, tabloids exploded with nearly 200 headlines despite the statement's request for quiet. Many used entirely made-up tales and phony photos to accuse her of infidelity. She later claimed that it caused her to experience PTSD-like symptoms. Never before had she been ready for such an invasion. She created The Weight of These Wings as a result of the heartbreak. She recorded 24 songs during late-night sessions with Frank Little and Eric Mass for the album, which was released on November 18, 2016. It sold over 133,000 copies in its first week of release, debuting at #1 on the Country Albums chart and #3 on the Billboard 200. In the end, it became platinum. Although they received accolades, songs like Vice were deemed too unpolished for country radio. She stepped out from the crowd with a project that reviewers adored while men dominated the charts. She publicly discussed gender inequality in country music that year. In 2016, women's songs made up just 10% of the total. She claimed that because she had faith in each of the album's 24 tracks, she would not trim it down. Since she was a teenager and bar owners informed her that they did not hire girls, she had experienced sexism. Other ladies were encouraged to speak up by her voice. Her dating life inspired new stories while she worked on her recovery. She had a brief romance with Anderson East in late 2016. Together they made appearances at the BMI Awards on October 31st and the CMA Awards on November 2nd. It was referred to as revenge dating. Although it did not last long, she subsequently claimed that the connection helped her breathe again and that therapy became her true anchor. In 2019, Wildcard followed. It signaled a shift in both music and life. The album was her first significant chapter following her covert January 2019 marriage to NYPD cop Brendan McLachlan. With over 72,000 first-week sales, it made its debut at the top of the country album chart. In 2020, Bluebird was named ACM Song of the Year. It was dubbed Fearless by critics. Another significant achievement was her Velvet Rodeo Las Vegas residency in 2022 and 23, which brought in about $20 million from 30 performances. However, she had to postpone concerts in 2023 due to extreme vocal strain. She was unable to speak at all for weeks. She expressed concern that she might never sing again. Fans clung to her via messages and tales, and she gradually recovered with rest and therapy. If I Was a Cowboy from her 2022 album Palomino peaked at #1 on the country airplay chart. Nevertheless, her life's pace started to catch up. She acknowledged that she had achieved burnout in 2024 and took a sabbatical. She relaxed, played golf, and spent time at home with Brendan. She was able to reignite her passion for music thanks to the break. Then November 2025 arrived. On the same day, her two cherished miniature horses, Sugar Pie and Adriana, all 18, passed away. She had known them for almost 2 decades. She related her sadness to her Moot Nation cause and shared it with her audience. She was reminded by the flood of messages that so many people were familiar with this type of suffering. She went back to her roots with her 2024 album, Postcards from Texas, which peaked to #1 on the top country albums chart. Everything she had experienced was weighed down by the project. She made her big comeback in 2025 with the announcement of a massive 100-date tour. After co-founding Big Loud Records in 2023, she managed her job, marriage, and her role as a mentor at the age of 42.